Today we are announcing that the $1.165 billion Kalgoorlie nickel project, which will produce cobalt nickel ore, which will undergo a process to produce mixed hydroxide precipitate. This is used as a raw material in growing the international battery market. This will be given major project status to ensure that the approvals and the investment can flow. Now, this is so important for the resources industry. Our government has always sought to facilitate investment in our resources sector because we know how important it is to Australia's future. You can't pay for things like the Henderson Wharf upgrade. You can't pay for submarines. You can't pay for warships. You can't pay for hypersonic weapons and all of these things unless your country is earning. And the resources sector is critical to that earning of this nation. Now, as a government, we sought to streamline the EPBC Act to ensure that we could get decisions faster and more certain to guarantee investment. And that was a project we took forward with the Premier of Western Australia, Mark McGowan. Mark and I, through the National Cabinet, were able to convince all the other premiers and chief ministers of the need to ensure we streamlined approval processes, a one-touch approval for EPBC Act approvals. Now, that was especially important for the resources industry. So state Labor government supported it, state Liberal government supported it, our government led it, and the Federal Labor Party opposed it. Now, it's not just there where they've sought to frustrate the resources industry. We also knew it was important for new resources projects to have greenfield site enterprise agreements and industrial relations arrangements to get these new projects up. So it's not just the capital investment, but the ongoing operations. We sought to legislate that. We took that forward. We had support from those at a state level, but we did not have support from the Federal Labor Party. Motivated also by the Greens. Another area which is so important to the resources industry was the work we did on occupational licensing, which meant that sparkies and the many other trades could move on their ticket between state jurisdictions and not have to pay multiple fees and licence fees and not have to gain additional certifications. These are the practical things that help your resources industry. Did we get support from Federal Labor for that? No, we didn't. They opposed it. And when these things went to a state level, we had even the Victorian Labor government, supported by the Victorian Greens, voting for these changes in their state parliament. But Anthony Albanese and the Greens at a federal level voted against it. So this is the real choice when it comes to the resources industry. A government, in my government, a Liberal Nationals government, that supports the resources industry by doing the things the resources industry needs to go forward. And that includes giving major project status to the major Kalgoorlie nickel project. But the resources industry also needs healthy communities to support it as well. And that's why I'm really pleased to be here today to be announcing $36 million over 4 years to establish 2 new university departments of rural health in Southwest and the Goldfields region of Western Australia. Now, the addition of these 2 new university departments will result in around 3,000 additional placement weeks per year at full implementation, and that's up to 500 more students gaining rural clinical experience. The key part of our rural health strategy to get more, particularly not just doctors, but allied health professionals, is so important. So the midwives and psychologists and others that work in teams to ensure the health of regional communities is you've got to train them here. You've got to train them here. And so when you can get the students, like we've seen some of the students here, come from whether it's Perth or other places and study here, then they get to understand and get connected to regional communities. Because as I said, Australia is not just the 8 capital cities and territories. It's the broad expanses of our rural and regional communities that deliver so much wealth and well-being for our country. And so we need to ensure that we're getting people trained in our rural and regional communities, particularly in the areas of health. But as we learned today, it's also an opportunity for those in remote communities, particularly Indigenous Australians, to be able to come to to a place like Kalgoorlie and to be able to get trained here so they can be going back to their remote and regional communities and be serving the well-being of those as well. So this is a great initiative, and I want to thank you, Rick, for the great work that you've done here on the ground. Nola Marino as well has done a great job. Melissa Price, who's been a great advocate for rural health initiatives right across Western Australia. I've got a fabulous Western Australian team here that understands what's needed in our resources industry, but in the communities that also drive those communities. So two big announcements here, particularly for the Goldfields region, but more broadly I think it says a lot about what our government believes in the future of our resources industry and the communities that actually realise that resources opportunity for Australia.